Category Introduction. Steel wire thread insert special gauge is divided into standard screw ring and special plug gauge. Special plug gauge is divided into 3 kinds: wire thread insert internal thread plug gauge, that is, bottom hole plug gauge, standard screw ring calibration gauge, and ordinary internal thread plug gauge. Definition and function. Standard perforated ring. It is divided into I ring and EI ring, respectively, representing the lower limit and upper limit of the internal thread for the wire screw. Common internal thread plug gauge. It is a tool to check whether the internal thread formed after loading the steel wire thread insert is qualified. Internal thread plug gauge. For wire thread insert, also known as bottom hole plug gauge. The bottom hole plug gauge is a tool to check whether the ST internal thread formed after the ST tab is qualified. Check plug gauge of standard hole ring. It is a special plug gauge for testing whether the standard hole ring is qualified, and each standard hole ring corresponds to a group of check plug gauges. Use method and judgment basis. Common plug gauge. After the 2 standard screw holes are respectively loaded into the wire thread insert, the plug gauge is tested with ordinary internal thread. The through end of the plug gauge completely passes through the E ring, and the stop end is screwed into the R ring to stop 小于等于 2 turns measured at exit, and it is regarded as the wire thread insert profile size. Bottom hole plug gauge. ST tap after tapping to form ST internal thread with the bottom hole plug gauge into the ST internal thread test. Plug gauge through completely. Stop and stop 小于等于 2 turns measured at exit, while conforming to the ST internal thread qualified. Check gauge. Whether the standard threaded ring is qualified is determined by the test of the calibration gauge. Each ring has its own special calibration gauge, and it is necessary to meet the complete pass of the through end, and the stop end is less than 1 circle measured at exit, in order to judge the standard threaded ring is qualified.